Welcome inside episode 16 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, a podcast all about learning to fly and flying later in life and midlife stage. This is what this podcast is. And my name is Chris Moran. I am known to some as the Midlife Pilot on YouTube. And quickly gaining ground on me and becoming a YouTube sensation himself is my co-host from the Music Row of Nashville, Tennessee, music creator, midlife aviator, deep thinker, and rapidly becoming a great friend of mine. Brian Siskind is alongside, as always. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for the superlatives. Deep thinker is such a nice way of saying neurotic, but I still appreciate it. This is awesome. I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad you made it. I'm so glad that I know where you are because I've been to that awesome place, that awesome house. And,
I cannot show it to those who are viewing on the stream tonight. I am in. This is the site of our Midlife Pilot fly-in from a few weeks ago. I'm at our house in Corolla, North Carolina. I have made my way to the deck because my whole family is here. My immediate family, so my wife and kids, but my parents are here. My sister and brother-in-law and their two young children are here. So we have 10 people in this house, and the only place I could find even remotely private enough to record this hour-long podcast was on the second floor deck out here upstairs. So I'm trying to do it from here tonight to do it. But yes, Brian has sat in this very seat, I believe, that I'm sitting in on this deck weeks ago.
I've had a lot of fun with some of your family too, which was a pleasure. So very cool. I kind of wish that I was there. I've got a little bit of FOMO, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like Bearded Aviator just said he's late. He should understand. You are not late. In fact, you're right on time because we just got going. But I'm super excited about even though it's maybe a bit dark. I really am excited about the topic that we're covering tonight, and it did start with. A lot of times I'll poll the internet to kind of just get a feel for people's interest in a topic or just see what people have to contribute outside of the group that's in here in the chat, which is obviously the best group. But basically, sent a thing out and just basically asked, what are you most afraid of in flying? And the post went haywire. There's more comments on this post than views on all the last 5 videos I've probably made. It's incredible to see the response. A lot of them obviously are redundant and maybe pretty obvious, although still meaningful. Some were kind of surprising. Some were purely sarcastic. You got the whole gamut of commenters and responders, but I'm super excited to talk about it. I think, I don't know. I think everybody's going to have something unique to offer. And I guess as opposed to just listing what people are afraid of, I guess we haven't really talked about it, but I suppose we can also just talk about maybe our experiences with, if we have any concerns that are similar, or how we might, at least to our experience thus far, deal with those anxieties or fears.
For sure. I think it is a good topic because after you sent it to me a couple of days ago, I thought about it a little bit as it relates to like the stage of flying that I'm in. And I have a couple of ideas too, but if you're here with us tonight, to those of you listening on the audio podcast, typically at 8 p.m. Eastern, tonight's special, it's 8:30 just because of my stupid schedule, but we love to interact with those of you who are here live for this recording, so definitely be posting in the chat kind of the ideas of things that scare you. But I'm not going to dictate this one. I'm going to I want to listen first, Brian. I've got to be a better listener. I have to also comment on, Brian had a video that he posted recently. I don't know if anybody has seen it on his channel on YouTube, Brian Siskind, called "Nobody Cares." Seriously, I know you're making faces at this, but I think this is kind of it's a concept that I think to those who create anything, whether it's YouTube content for aviation or I guess really anything, I'm in love with this concept ever since we started talking about it, because And here's a look, kind of peek behind the curtain. I published a video this week for the first time in a long time. It's been a month since I had published anything on my YouTube channel, and I am consistently paralyzed by thoughts of inadequacy or not being able to publish things because I overthink what the expectations are for me to publish. And I think the way you have articulated the concept of nobody cares in a way that is not demeaning to the audience. I mean, it's not what it sounds like. You know what I mean? It is such an empowering concept. If you have not checked out Brian's video called Nobody Cares, you should watch it. It really is it's kind of it's freeing is what it is. It's a really good concept if you're a creator. It's something really to kind of think about. Anyway, leading with that, I had to get that out of the way because I watched it twice, actually.
Oh, thanks, man. That's awesome. So cool, because when we talked about it in person a lot, and it's sort of, it takes a minute to figure out a way to articulate that without it sounding pithy or whatever. So I'm glad you got it. And
it was very, 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 very good. It's been super helpful to me. In fact, the depth of kind of our relationship has been super helpful to me, and that you're kind of my, we're like yin and yang a little bit. Like, you have been very helpful, to kind of just help me focus on the right things and not so much on the things that are not.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's been very good.
That's the giving back that I can do, because I mean, your videos, really inspired me and helped me get through training. Because I just thought, man, if this guy can do it, I sure as heck can do it.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. But no, your stuff really helped me. So if I can help back, that's great.
For sure. So what are you scared of? I guess let's just start there. Like, let's jump into this. What are some things? Because I mean, aviation in itself is scary. I mean, there's anybody who doesn't at least acknowledge the fact that every time you go full throttle on the runway and you're like barreling down the runway, that there's inherent risk. I mean, there's risk involved. You're fooling yourself. I mean, there's absolutely risk involved in that. So what scares you? What scares you?
Well, I mean, we'll save some of the more obvious things, but if I had anything that might be unique, I would say, and I don't have any reason for this. I haven't had a situation that came close to this at all, but I just know that it can happen. But one of and this is also, when we're asking this question, we're not saying what is the most likely thing or how rational is this? It's not about that. Like, a lot of this is not rational, and that's okay. It's just about what it is. So for me, when I have other people in the plane that are not pilots and perhaps maybe not the most versed in getting flown around or whatever, besides the obvious of somebody getting airsick or whatever, I actually have just a weird part of my brain that's just thinking, what am I going to do if somebody just freaks out? And by I mean freak out, like sort of like a caged animal, just somebody goes into some weird, almost like a seizure of fight or flight. And I know that there's plenty of incidents that have happened with CFIs where the students have overpowered them on the controls, nervously just grabbing and pulling, so there's so many things you have to do in aviation that are kind of the not intuitive thing. And to the naked eye, to the bystander, to the person just sitting next to you that doesn't know anything about what's going on, you have a situation where maybe you all of a sudden have partial power or something, and you're immediately dropping the nose. Well, that could very much feel like the wrong thing to do to them, and they might feel in their fight or flight that they need to grab the controls and pull it back, and then being in some wrestling match with people like that. A little side story real quick, and I don't want to talk too long on this, but my father was a pilot, of course, and I'll never forget when I was on a ski lift with him. I was 9 years old. I got on the ski lift with him. We started to go up, and I slipped and fell off of the chairlift, but I was able to grab on with my hands and hold on. And the lift operator didn't see us, and we were still going up. And I looked up at my dad, and I was expecting him to try to grab me. And he knew that he just kind of, because of everything going on, he actually just started plucking my fingers off, So I'm like, what, because he knew that if I fell right then that I'd be fine. But if he waited another even 5 seconds, I'd hit some rocks. So, there's so many things in flying that are not intuitive. So and you don't know unless you know. So that's probably one of mine, is just somebody thinking that it just like trying to override a decision in a situation where I know better and they don't, but they're freaking out.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I have a similar one to that. I have a similar fear that is not exactly that, but it's actually it's a little darker than that, honestly. So I run a flying club here in well, not here, in Fairmont where I live, and we have about 30 plus members, and I'm regularly meeting new people who want to join the club who are not pilots, people who want to learn to train to become pilots, who are potential student pilots who I am taking as a non-CFI basically up for a discovery flight. I've done this several times. So not like a teaching discovery flight. Like, have you ever been in a small airplane? They're like, no. And I'm like, would you like to? I would love to get a free hour in an airplane and just take you up I would just love to fly anytime I can, and, then I sit them in the right seat. I have this probably, like you said, some of these aren't like the logical fears, right? But like this fear of taking people I don't know in an airplane. Like, I don't know these people that I'm meeting for the first time at the airport before I put them in the plane beside me. A lot of these are guys. A lot of them are younger and more built than me, like could easily overpower me in any situation. I have this illogical fear of like one of them freaking out, like you say, or even worse, even mentally in a worse place, like intentionally doing something, and taking over the plane and taking us down. That's a constant fear I have when I take a stranger up. Like, I don't have that fear necessarily when I take people that I have a long history with or people that I know. But
so you did take it to the next level. Yeah, that is darker.
Yeah, I have a really regular fear of that. My second one, unless you have more on that, my second one is I think a little bit more reasonable. And I think I saw something else flash by the comments earlier, like one dog geek. I have to acknowledge this real quick. One dog geek who's here with us tonight, who was at the fly-in, Mark says, "Oh wow, Chris, when I asked you for a ride, I didn't mean to tweak your fears." We didn't end up getting to go out in Mark's Cherokee 140. I really, really wanted to go fly in it. Things didn't work out. Believe me, Mark, when I tell you, and I know you're joking. That was that did not cross my mind in jumping in your airplane, but. My second one is I saw flash by in the chat earlier, and I think a lot of people have this fear. I have a constant underlying fear of like structural failure of the aircraft, like of just something failing, whether it is in the the control system, the control cables, the control surfaces, or specifically in our Cherokee, which doesn't even remotely qualify for the wing spar AD, but it has been done. The eddy current, everything has been done. I'm a constant state of concern, not like overwhelming, but like it's in the back of my mind all the time. Like the wing might fall off today. I don't know. Is the wing going to fall off today? I have a constant state of hyper awareness of the fact that these are 50 and 60-year-old airplanes, and the thing could fall apart.
I have one question for you about that. So is that what was going through your mind when you did that approach down to Billy Mitchell right there on the coast, and then carried on up from there? I seem to remember.
I mean, I'm not sure what approach.
A little bit of wing loading going on there.
Well, I think it was less. It was definitely, there may have been a little loading. I was actually not thinking about that at the time. Now that you mention it,
the one time you're not.
The one time I had the most loading on the wing, I probably should have been thinking about it, but no. I just worry. I think that's always in my mind in these airplanes is like the things I can't control. Right? Because you train for the stuff that you can. You fly the things the way you were trained, and you make the decisions the way you were trained. But the stuff you really can't control is the structural or the control things that could potentially fail in the airplane. And so that's always kind of in my mind on every flight.
Well, so I want to do a rapid fire kind of list or sort of a recitation of this list that we got, because there's just so many. If anybody in the chat has any that they feel aligned with or would like to comment on, we can kind of double down on some of these. But I thought maybe we can just, because there's hundreds. Turns out if you ask people what they're afraid of, there's a lot of things, which is good. So obviously engine failure on takeoff. That's again, one that right. Like all you can do is what you can do.
That's a bigger deal in some people's cases than others. Stinky Weasel is my friend Bill is here. He just got his private pilot certificate a month ago.
Oh, nice.
He mentioned that as his biggest fear at an airport like we fly out of at Fairmont. It's a 3,000-ish foot runway with a hill on one side and a river on the other. In our mountainous terrain in West Virginia, it is a big deal. I mean, then in a lot of cases that's going to be a non-recoverable. I mean, that's a off airport, like bad terrain situation, deal. Some of you guys who are out in like the Midwest, we've got some guys out from Nebraska and Wisconsin, some other folks, like, things are a little different there at a lot of your fields, your 8,000 foot runways and your fields on either side. And like, that's a much less, that's a less deal for some folks than it is for others. But in our case, for sure, engine failure on takeoff is a gigantic risk at our Fairmont Airport in West Virginia. Yeah,
I think it kind of related to that, something I've always thought about is I'm afraid of being in the position of making a decision based on an engine out, of doing something that I know is not going to work out for me versus the risk of affecting or hurting someone else. And that dynamic can play out in so many different ways depending on what's happening. And I think I just have not necessarily a fear of the outcome of that as much as just the fear of being under that duress and that dilemma in that moment and having to wrestle with those kinds of mathematics. But yeah.
Bearded Aviator brings up a point. It's pseudo related, I guess, because a lot of these things happen on takeoff or on landing. He says, been really close to some huge birds. As a PSA, they do not always dive away. Bird strikes kind of scare me. Fortunately, have not hit one yet. Bird strikes obviously it's a big deal in GA. We had a guy hit 4 geese in our Cessna 172 in our club's plane on landing at Fairmont. Fortunately, it was on landing. Takeoff could have been a much worse thing. And also, fortunately for him, hit the wing, the leading edge of the wing, and not like right into the cockpit. But that put our plane out of commission for a few months. I mean, did some pretty significant damage to the leading edge of the wing. So bird strikes obviously are a big deal. Could have hit the prop, had to rest up the prop on takeoff or whatever. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that came up a lot here too.
Bird strikes are a big deal.
Yeah, that came up a lot, and that's another one where it's like, I mean, there's only so many things that you can really do. I mean, I think my experience at pilots have been pretty good about, if I'm coming into some weird airport or something, pilots on the ground, just they hear you're coming, they'll say, hey, well, watch out for this or watch out for these. They're all in this tree over here or whatever. So I think the good news is most pilots are nervous about that and are happy to share information to keep others out of trouble. So that's good. So somebody else said, essentially making a mistake that leads to some sort of an emergency or loss of control. And I think that's a really good one. Sadly, I heard about an accident just the other day where a young kid basically, thought he was having an engine out, and then figured out that he just was in a 150 and had all the flaps still down on the go of a touch and go, and he just went with all the flaps, and that may have been a pretty big factor in the whole situation. I don't know, but either way, I've heard of friends making that mistake. I know a lot of people have made that mistake. I can't think of many things in flying where you don't get a second chance. Like there's certain mistakes you can make where you mess up one, you do activate one switch in the wrong way at the wrong time, and you're going to smash the ground. so I think that I can relate to just sort of being nervous about that. I had my flaps on takeoff once, but that didn't last. So anyway, it's like I can totally relate to the primary fear of making a mistake.
Yeah, that's fair. I also saw that. I've been following that story as well, and it is kind of crazy. I've kind of moved past the idea. I would tell people all the time that fly with me, or people that are thinking of flying, like it's, people have this fear of GA, and I'm like, worst case scenario, we always talk about engine failure. The plane isn't going to fall out of the sky. In just about every case, the things you hear of, the accidents you hear of, are people who, and someone mentioned it in the chat a few minutes ago, I think it was One Dull Geek. Yeah, Mark said weather is his biggest fear. It's difficult to predict, with accuracy. It can go from docile to deadly in a snap. VFR into IMC gives them chills. The accidents that our friends, our non-pilot friends, read about, the people we're going to take with us, are like the planes that you see that fall out of the sky, seemingly, or like end up in the ground. And a lot of times I tell people, well, people, it's decision making, right? It's like the things like 4 or 5 steps ahead of that led them to this case. They made bad decisions. They flew into conditions that they weren't qualified to be in. They made decisions in those conditions that led to a structural failure of the plane, and they tore the plane apart in the sky, or they stall, they had a stall spin situation where they, at too low altitude, where they didn't fly the plane all the way to the ground. I tell people all the time, like, you end up, if you find yourself in that condition of an engine out, even, you fly the plane until it will not fly. Like, no matter what you're flying into, fly it into the trees, or to the water, or to the road, or to the field, whatever you're flying to, fly it. Which sounds easy when we sit here and discuss it on this podcast tonight. But yeah, you're right. It's like, I try to think, my mindset has changed. I think that comes with like time and experience. Like, it's less about the one thing that I'm going to do now that's going to make, like, it's
right.
it's not an instant decision that I'm going to like, whoop, up, it's over. The plane is in the ground now. Like, there are very few cases in my mind now today that I'm going to flip a switch or pull a lever or do a thing that's going to put me into a situation like that. But you think about the student, the solo student, and you think there are those cases. There are those cases. I saluted at 9, Brian. Like, there are cases, and that's what I do all the time. I think, my God, there are so many things I didn't know at that time that, like, I could have put myself in a position, where if anything had gone wrong in a way that it had never gone wrong before, how would I have reacted to that moment? And I just think those like critical moments decline. I think the further along you get, like the instantaneous moments, like they become less and less and less of a factor. Now, certainly there are more critical times, like you're close to the ground, you're slow speed, you're high angle of attack. Like, there are times where things are more critical, but it's not like it's not quite like that as much anymore for me.
Well, and then, on the other side of it, you've got just purely external variables that are beyond your control. I suppose there's things you can do, but generally, one of the common things that came up in this list was people are definitely afraid of midair collisions and just being affected by someone else not doing what they're supposed to do, or when they're supposed to do it, or something around that. And that's not much different to me than just the, being in traffic on driving and just being in a anticipatory defensive mindset at all times. And you just do the best, you can. I've not had any particular close calls. So I haven't experienced maybe that sort of terror. I've had some things where I'm like, that plane really shouldn't be that close to me. But then I figured out it was you and I was following you. So I should just slow down. So, no, but, so, there's definitely those things. And I think that, and somebody in here said, they think that being afraid of a midair is a silly thing. And I'm like, no, that's not a silly thing to be afraid. I mean, it's probably one of the most, if everybody's got a fear of it, then that's good, because then they will be more vigilant. And so that's what it takes. I was trying to think. A lot of people said they were afraid of the invoice or the bill, which I thought was funny. And there were some others that were just around, accidentally flying into airspace that you shouldn't fly into. Somebody said they're afraid that the FAA will not truly acknowledge their awesomeness. So, I mean, that's a thing.
I'm still waiting.
Here's another one that I thought was actually quite common with me, and it had me thinking a lot, actually. A lot of people were talking about failing a medical or just aging out or whatever it is, but just essentially just knowing that this can't go on forever. And has, that's a tough one, that's a really tough thing to sit there and ponder, especially for us midlife, pilots,
Yeah, for sure. I think that probably secondarily, I would agree with everyone. I think secondary to my fear of like structural or mechanical failure of the airplane is probably midair or other pilots' behavior. I've just become. I fly in and out of a non-towered airport at Fairmont, and I've flown to other reasonably busy non-towered airports. And wow, people were quick to remind me in the comment sections of my videos that straight in is not the approved. Anyway, that we could argue all day the merits of various things that have happened to me over the course of my short flying career, but other people are unpredictable. I mean, human beings are unpredictable, driving or flying or whatever we're doing, regardless of because there's gray areas to everything. I don't care if it's FAA regulations or whatever it is. There's a gray kind of area to these things, and I think that in decision making to the so I think that other people and their decisions are probably secondary to like mechanical failures, but that would be my second biggest fear, I think, is what other people are doing.
Yeah, and some people were talking about sort of things around sort of getting the sort of told to copy a number, like lack of ATC compliance in some way, or breaking a reg, or those kind of things. For whatever reason, I don't have that one so much, because I just feel like anything could happen at any point, but I'm so paranoid about that. I suppose like when we were out at your fly-in, I was flying with the Sage, and I mean, they are serious about those MOAs out there, man. And we just, barely cut the corner on one, and they were right on us, man. So I don't know. I just don't want to cause any problems. So I don't worry about that one so much.
Here's an interesting one. Josh, my buddy from Pittsburgh, who is a Cirrus pilot, started sliding on takeoff on a snowy runway. First instinct wasn't to abort takeoff, but rather try to pull it into the air below rotation speed. That him in retrospect. That's an interesting. I find myself in some of those conditions, Brian. I don't know about you. Sometimes, like I commit, like I sometimes do feel like when I look back on things, like I'm committed to taking off before I should be, and I'm committed to landing sometimes before I should be. Like I've made the commitment that I'm taking off or I'm landing before maybe it's a safe time to do that. That's I look at when I watch back some things, like I think sometimes, you probably should have went around, or should have I don't know about those things, but like I get committed that I'm going to put this thing down or I'm going to get up in the air. But I can see how that can happen, right? Because like, I have not had the experience of sliding on a slippery, like contaminated runway before, but like I could see the inclination. Like I'm already going so fast, and in the split second decision, like, well, if I'm already sliding this bad, how am I going to stop safely? Like I'm thinking, like I just got to get this thing off the ground, just get it off the ground. Like I could see the instinct to like pull it off and like fight with it and try to save it, right?
Especially in a reasonably powered plane in
Right.
cold air. I don't know. I can't say that I would have done it different. I think, I guess it would depend on, I don't know, what's around. Are there snowbanks? Are there, but yeah, that's a pretty wild one. And by the way, Josh, congratulations. Your video, has gone obviously totally viral, and, that one video has more views than the entirety of my life's work. So well done for that, man. Really well done.
Yeah, that was he had a video on there was an emergency airplane in flight. He was talking to a controller. There was another aircraft squawking emergency, trying to land at a nearby airport. He was like playing the eyes for the air traffic controller. It was pretty cool. We talked about last time, so that was pretty cool. If you haven't seen it, we should make a note, Brian. We got to link that in the description of this video on YouTube, but we'll make a link to to that video again. It was pretty cool to hear him talking to the controller about that.
Yeah, that was a good experience, and obviously being a good citizen trying to help out is a good thing. So a lot of people definitely talked about, by the way, sort of, controls failing, specifically, just losing an elevator, or, rigging, I suppose. I had just a weird, by the way, this is not necessarily related, but sort of related. I did my first night cross country this past week, which, by the way, I still am just astounded that that's not required. I don't understand how it is that you're doing all these things for the first time after you have your pilot license. That just seems a little strange, but I had a really good flight. I did my night currency, and then not long after did a night cross country. And in doing that, I flew a plane that I've flown a lot, but it had just gotten out of 100-hour. And man, like the whole rigging felt entirely different, and it felt like I couldn't get enough. I actually had a little freak for a second that maybe I just misjudged when I checked the flight controls when I took off, or that just something had happened that had jammed it, because I felt like I couldn't get back pressure on landing. It wasn't the worst landing in the world, but it certainly wasn't the best. And I've flown this plane, I don't know, 70 hours or something, or 100 hours. And I could not, I for a split second, I thought, this is happening right now. I'm going to have to just use trim or whatever. It didn't happen, but it did have me thinking about control surfaces going bye-bye is a little nerve-wracking. I feel like I've studied a lot about sort of, Bold Method has a bunch of great articles and scenario-based things on if you lose a particular flight control, what you can do. Have you looked that stuff over, Chris?
I have, and it's not to downplay it. Because it's obviously obviously it is a huge deal. But the nice thing about the planes that most of us are flying, the small light single engines, it sounds catastrophic, but if things are if the plane is in good shape, like these things are generally recoverable. With secondary controls. So like between power, trim, and flaps, especially with like elevator specifically, that's generally recoverable. It's not, but it's horrifying. It's horrifying. It would be nobody wants to go through that, but like, it's not an immediate, like, you're planting the thing in the field, it's, but yes, I have looked through a lot of that, like how to kind of the best practice to overcome the various failures of a specific system. Elevator seems not the easiest, but like there you have a number of tools at your disposal, because so many things impact attitude, right? Like power and trim.
Yeah.
In our 172, we don't have the luxury of rudder trim. In the Cherokee, we do, so we have an additional trim axes for kind of a loss of rudder. Now, I would be horrified in our Cherokee 235 to lose rudder like on takeoff, like just because of the left turning. Like, I don't know how, like hopefully there's nothing to the left of you because I mean, that's the direction you're going.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's kind of horrifying. That's kind of horrifying.
Did you see the flight club that I'm in got a 180?
I did, and that's exciting. That's
Yeah.
exciting. I hope you plan on, I'm assuming you're going to plan on getting checked out on that thing and getting some time. I mean, that changes things a little bit in terms of like payload and like speed and, the things you can do with that, I'm sure. So that's kind of,
I just want to be like you. That's all.
You're getting close. You got 55 more horsepower, right, to get to the 235. Fowler 28379 says, funny story about wrong switch. So we were talking earlier about, you flip one wrong switch and like, whoa.
Yeah.
Early in training, recovery from power off stall, motor skills got crossed up and he pushed the nose over full instead of pushing in full power. So in my mind, I'm thinking like on a power off stall, I'm thinking, well, there's worse things you could do, I guess, than push the nose over. It's quick. It's a slower way to like recover. You should be kind of doing both, kind of both things, but like at least you're going the nose in the right direction. If you had said like pulled full back instead of like pushing power in, it'd be like even more catastrophic. But
yeah, it's not bad. It's not too bad.
Not the worst. Hey, I've heard worse. I mean, there's worse things you could have done there.
So another one that somebody mentioned that I can actually attest to pretty as being one of mine is somebody said a wasp in the cabin, which has happened to me probably twice or three times, but I don't want anything like that going on.
We had some people from our flying club shared. We had a couple of we have a Slack. We run a Slack group that everybody communicates in, and we have one channel on our Slack group called Flight Photos, and the whole point is like people to share pictures and videos from their flights in club airplanes. And one guy had one of the planes out a couple weeks ago, and there were bees. There was a bee in the cockpit, and that's a terrible fear of mine too. I mean, like it's fine, but like I do not need to be dealing with like swatting this thing away. But because I would be like, you act like I'm gonna be sterile cockpit and like take off straight ahead, like all my energy is focused on it. But I can promise you, if there's a wasp flying around me, at least a little bit of my attention is diverted to like trying to keep it away from me as it's coming up. One dog geek said, I had a wasp in the cabin during my Czech ride. The DPE freaked out a ton more about it than I did. He's written about it, but not filmed, obviously, because he wasn't filming his Czech ride. But yeah, that's classic. What a time for that to happen.
I had a praying mantis hanging out on the window lever.
Oh, man.
That's cool.
That is cool.
They can't hurt you, right? I mean,
no, but you also can't kill them. I mean, I guess you're not supposed to kill them.
Are they protected?
Or is that a myth? I always had question whether that was like
here we go. He's going down the Google.
Quick, Brian, fill time.
One that I thought was a pretty funny entry that somebody had. Well, darkly funny, but they said their biggest fear was surviving a really bad crash, which I totally get. I mean,
I
don't know.
Apparently, it is not indeed illegal.
All right,
kill a praying
mantis there and just
smash
them all
you
like.
I mean, don't. I mean, why? I mean, I don't know. Do what you want, but it's not illegal. So I'm not going to tell you to do it or not do it.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I appreciated your Newport News video. If people haven't seen it, then they need to go see it. But but yeah, you definitely had a little bit of an interesting challenge getting in there, and it was quite humorous, really, to see, because we've all been in this position, but just the expression on your face when the tower is telling you that, I think it was left pattern or whatever it was, and you just kind of said, okay, great, and then you're looking, and then you're kind of looking again, and there's one point where you're kind of like, you can see like all the, it was exactly like that GIF that's real common with like the math equations going by the guy's face. you're you're trying to tilt your head or just anything to
It
have what this guy made sense.
It took 100% of my brain power at that moment to try to figure out. He's like left pattern to runway 25, and I'm going to like, I'm looking at I'm thinking the only way I can go left traffic was like cross the airport and get on the other side, and that is very unusual. Those of you who fly into towered airports know, like, it is, especially like international airports like Newport News, like they're not having you cross the field, like they're entering you the most convenient way generally from the direction of flight. And I'm looking at this thing, but I'm still so new. It was that moment where I was like, I'm not going to ask this guy at the international airport like that I'm not supposed to be left traffic. So I'm puzzling this out in my head. I'm thinking, I've got to be looking at this wrong. Like, what is right and what is left? And eventually he came back and said, yeah, I see some of the comments in the chat, but like those of you who saw the uncut version, especially, that's available for patrons, like I couldn't understand what he wanted me to do, but I was already trying to kind of maneuver how I was going to cross the field. And eventually he just came back out of the blue and was like, actually, 52 Lima, make that right traffic for runway 25. And I told him, I was straight up like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like that makes more sense. Like, I don't know what I should have just asked you originally, but yeah, that was a great experience. And then Brian, you may have noticed that was the same video that he said, are you able to accept a land and hold short clearance? And that was like on my base leg. He asked me about that. And it was funny. That was my first land and hold short request. And I had pre-briefed, you guys would be proud of me, I had pre-briefed that airport, and I knew exactly how much distance I had between my runway and the hold short of runway 20. And it was like 7,000 feet. And I thought to myself in that moment, if I can't land this 172 and be 1,000 feet, something is first time ever accepting a land and hold short clearance as well, which I did in plenty of time. But yeah, that was a cool approach.
Yeah, well, people need to go check that out. By the way, I think I have a recollection also of the tower asking someone else to do a land and hold short, and they said no, or they said unable. But then the same person came back on and said, actually, sure.
I have a theory. What happened there. I don't know this.
Did I hear that correctly though?
You did. That is what happened. I left it in there. I think it was a student with an instructor. And I think the student answered, and then he and his instructor talked, because there was a ton of training going on at that airport. I think he and his instructor talked, and the instructor like, well, when I'm with you, you can do that. Because I think the student probably knew that, like, oh, I can't accept a hold short instruction.
Yeah,
I think that's what happened. It was a 172 also. I saw them land later, and I think it was probably a training flight that happened there. A lot of things happen. If you're reading between the lines, I didn't leave it all in the like public version, but in the patron version, there's a lot of things happening on that approach from other people. There was another airplane trying to take off 20 who wanted a takeoff clearance. They have really specific rules on crossing runways when they're landing and holding short folks on one runway and taking off like the right pattern on the other. So like they're running two different patterns here, but their rules, like, it's not a Wild West situation where they're going to like tell the people landing on 25 to hold short and also concurrently be clearing 20 traffic to take off, because you could quickly end up with a situation where the guy on 25, like me, had to go around and the guy on 20 was taking off, and we have like an immediate, like right after takeoff conflict. So there's still rules on that. And the guy was trying to convince the controller, like, we can make an immediate turnout to the right. And the guy was like, the controller's like, yeah, I can't clear you for that. So you're just going to have to hang on a minute. So there was a lot of really cool things, like, and I heard all of it in the moment. You're focused on, I'm a final. And so I'm pretty focused, but like, I hear all this going on, and it was like, I'm glad I got to watch this again when I was editing that video, because there was a lot happening that I learned a lot from that flight. It was super cool. But thank you for bringing it up. That's super cool. And also thank you to Malachi Constant, who is here with us tonight. Said first time catching the show live, started listening to the podcast a few weeks back. So he's here with us like live in the chat tonight. So that's super cool to have you.
Cool. I like how worlds can collide.
Yeah, me too. Audio podcast meets like the live video recording. That's super cool. Glad you could hang out tonight.
Yeah, and it's actually doing really, really well over there. And so thanks to the people that have gone and left the reviews and all that, because it actually, I think it really, I don't know, does things to the algorithm gods or whatever, but I think we've got about 15 reviews on Apple Podcasts now, and it's really great. And I think that stuff helps. So I don't know, if you press buttons and things around things that we've done, then it always helps things. That's about as elaborate as I'll get about it. I'll never say, please like, share, subscribe. I can't handle that.
Yeah, I hate doing it too. I do hate doing that part of the work too.
So
but
gross.
I know it is gross, but it is helpful. It is helpful. I mean, it is, these things do make a difference in like our ability to, but like you say though, like nobody cares, Brian. We're the idea. And I think this does transcend, sorry for getting off. I hate
this is what we do
the last 15 minutes, but like, I do think there's something to be said for this idea, and this is getting a little heady, but like, the idea is that like there's nobody getting like, this is not a get rich. The idea that we're putting stuff back into, I told my wife the other day, we were talking about this. Okay. I'm 44. I'll be 45 in January. I am still thinking about things like, what is going to happen? Like when I'm gone, like I'm more and more these days, I'm thinking about like what's going to happen later. Right. And I think, no one's going to remember the companies that I worked for, did the things like the work that I did, like in my day-to-day jobs, are so irrelevant.
Yeah.
The things that I think are going to stick, like the flying club that we started at Fairmont, that is now, we started with 5 of us. There's 35 people in 3 airplanes, and like people are learning to fly, and like people are getting their certificates here, and like memories are being created, and like things are happening here. Like that's the kind of thing that I say, this is what is going to be here when I'm not anymore. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way about this content, like this I'm not stupid. The YouTube channel I know it's not stupid. My point is, it was created because I like started this thing at 40, the like learning to fly, and then people got on board with it and said like, I'm in midlife too, and I'm learning to fly, and like it became this community, and suddenly there's 5,000 subscribers, and like things are happening.
Yeah, congrats on
this. Thank you, and that was a huge thing. This is the stuff that matters. Mm-hmm. Like I just want to make stuff for the sake of making it. Like we're not trying to do anything here other than like talk about like, is this the best produced podcast? Even the best produced aviation podcast on the internet? No, it's absolutely not. I can name you 5 ahead of us.
I don't even listen to this podcast.
Airline pilot guy, opposing bases, all these people who I'm a patron subscriber to these. Like, no, this is not the best. But what else am I doing with my time that is more? Is going to have a longer last, other than my family, obviously, but going to have a longer impact on things after I'm gone than what we're doing here. And I don't think there is any. So like the point is, all that to say, like, this is a passion. This is not a financial project. This is like a passion project, and I just want to create things. And so like you're helping me do that with your like idea that like nobody cares. Like that's a huge mindset change for me to make it easier to create things. Anyway,
way more fun.
So much more fun. But Bearded Aviator says, the Newport News video was great. Glad you took us all the way to the FBO. And that is a thing that I did. Quick thing. I actually showed the taxi sequence, like the whole way after landing to like taxi instructions and like getting across the international airport, like how to get to the FBO I was going to. Cause I don't normally show that, cause that's kind of like in the weeds kind of stuff. But like, I thought I never show this. And like, I don't know how many people, to a lot of people, that's a big hurdle for flying to a new place.
Oh,
like, how do I taxi to this place? So I just left it in there cause I thought it was cool, and it was pretty busy and there was a lot going on.
No, that was a great idea. By the way, Jay Little says, do either of you participate in the Wings program? I do. I mean, I'm not, constantly doing things, but I definitely have accumulated over time with the drone piece and with the aviation piece. I definitely have, some experience points there, whatever they call it. And it does help with your insurance. actually. At
Really?
least, yeah.
Well, it won't help with my club insurance, but yeah.
I mean, I know that it might be very nominal, but I figure they ask you if you're a part of, if you do any, they basically ask if you do any extracurricular safety training. And when you list the wings program and you say how many credits you have, then that actually, might save you $5 a year, but it's something. So yeah, the answer is yes.
I want to answer Josh's question. Do you call speaking of new FBOs and like going to new airports? I got several questions on YouTube about this after I posted the video. Do you call Unicom and where do you park? New FBOs still make me nervous. So I'm going to say this answer varies greatly by where you're going. But in the cases that I had it, so that was the video I just posted was my first time to Newport News. I've been back there twice, believe it or not, since that video was filmed in February or March. I don't know. It's been a while. I've been back there twice. That was Atlantic Aviation. And what is super cool about Atlantic, they're one of the big players, and you've heard horror stories about big players and how they don't like GA, but whatever. Atlantic was super great. I was able to make an account online for free, put in my tail numbers and stuff, and pre-plan my trip. Like I told them I was coming when I was anticipated arriving. Generally speaking, all these FBOs are monitoring tower frequency anyhow, or at least ground, like they're listening for tail numbers that are coming in. And when I told them I was going to Atlantic, that perked the ears up at Atlantic. But what's cool is if you find one of these big places that has a place you can tell them you're coming ahead of time, like I was able to tell them like estimated how much fuel I wanted. And I also put a note in there. It's like, I have a rental car from Enterprise. They're dropping off at your place, whatever. Every time I've flown in there, when I got there, the lineman that met me at Atlantic, when I shut my engine down, said, "Hey, we see that you're going to want fuel. Do you still want 18 gallons or whatever it is?" And I said, "No, just top the inboard main tanks, leave the tips alone or whatever." They were just ready to do it. And when I walked in the FBO, no joke, the person at the front desk greeted me by name. They'd watched who I'd come in with and handed me keys to the rental car and said, "Mr. Moran, your rental car is, ready. It's parked out here in the Enterprise lot." Like it was seamless. And no fee for that. I mean, I did pay, I think at Atlantic, I paid like a $18 overnight security fee or whatever, because I was parked there for multiple overnights, but there was no landing fee. There was just fuel. But I have had anywhere I've ever went, Charleston, West Virginia, Newport News, Currituck County here at North Carolina.
I think it depends also. Yeah, again, you're talking more about Class Charlie airports, I think, and there's a lot of Class Deltas. You kind of get into that weird interstitial space between how service level is this place or whatever. For me, I just maybe I just have a certain certain amount of luck, but I just roll up, man. They know I'm taxiing.
Oh yeah,
and I just roll up, and somebody comes out or they don't. The other thing I learned, at least even at my home airport here, is it was the first time that somebody just didn't come out and tell me where to park, and I saw a spot along the front line, and I just thought, I'm just gonna go. I wheeled that thing around, and I even left it sticking out. I didn't even push it back, and just walked in there and said, "I'm parked over here. I'd like fuel. I'll be back tomorrow." And they were like, "Cool, yeah, great."
Absolutely. In most airports, especially Class Deltas that are small with a single FBO or whatever, you just show up.
I felt a little bit like Chevy Chase returning a rental car or something. It felt more kind of like
right,
like I was being callous, but it was really just like, I don't know. I'm just gonna if you're not coming to me, I'm just gonna roll up.
But like at the one of the video, like Newport News, they have two like full service FBOs there. So the guy even asked me like, which FBO are you going to? Well, I'd done my homework already. I knew I was going to Atlantic. So yeah, I think it does definitely vary by size. Like, where are you going? If there's any need to even call ahead. In most cases, even if I hadn't planned ahead at Atlantic, no big deal. Just show up. Like you just show up, and they're listening to the frequencies. There's going to be somebody out there to meet you. So it seems super intimidating. But I have yet to run into anyone anywhere who has been anything but super helpful.
So we're saying all this as an answer, and then Josh is going to have a next video that he publishes, and it's going to be like incident at FBO,
right? Because I didn't call ahead, and they didn't know I was coming, and like, yeah, exactly. Man. That's good stuff.
So Old Aviator says,
yeah, I'll fire that up. When I was getting back into flying after decades, I'm assuming this is the one, your early videos were comforting as you were going through the training that I was also going through again in order to get a flight review. I appreciate that. That's, I was, it was, I do think we've talked about this. It's kind of the base of our podcast, Brian, right? Like there's challenges to it when you're doing this at this age, when you're kind of starting here and you haven't had any previous, it's hard. It's hard as a kid, and it's hard as a midlife. It's harder as a midlife person, I would argue. So it's, I appreciate that. I started the videos. I've told people before, this whole kind of thing started from, when I was just trying to document my own training, and it ended up being super helpful for me to document my own training. And then when it started becoming helpful for others, I was like, this is freaking sweet. I'm going to keep doing it. Like it's,
do you ever go back and revisit just casually or skip through any of your early training videos?
Yes, I do. It's horrifying.
It really is, isn't it?
It is horrifying. Yep. To go back
to the point where you kind of want to take them off the internet.
I do, but I'm not, because I built this beautiful playlist on YouTube, the Road to Private Pilot series, and it is the entirety from the very first intro flight to the check ride. And I can't break that up now. But yes, I watch some of them and think.
So your OCD supersedes your vanity is what you're saying.
My God. I think, oh my God, I can't mess up this order now. But some of them are like, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would do this so differently. But that's part of the process. It's part of the process for everybody. And it's a good process. And I'm still learning every single time. In fact, I'm so excited. You guys stay tuned. Brian, I'm editing part 2 of the Outer Banks flying video right now, which is our trip to Okokoks. It'll be coming for patrons, Lord willing, this weekend, and for the general public on 10/11, the 18th of June. And then my very next video is going to be, hopefully, this Sunday. I'm going to go back to Fairmont, jump in a Cessna 150. For the very first time I've ever flown a 150. I'm putting cameras on the airplane, no instructor with me, just checklists and POH. And I'm going to fly a new model airplane for the first time by myself, and just document every step of it. And I could not be more excited. I don't know what happened to me. At some point during my training, I was like, I can't wait to fly bigger, faster planes. And now I am like, I can't wait to fly the legendary trainer, the Pinto of all single engine aircraft. And Stinky Weasel 1 is in here. It's his airplane, actually. He just bought, my friend Bill, and 3 others just got together and formed an LLC and bought this airplane and leased it to our flying club. So it has been waiting at Fairmont. I've not got to see it personally or get in. I've never flown a 150.
Do you think it smells bad?
No, I hope not. It better not, Bill. But it's beautiful.
Well, I was just thinking based on his name.
Stinky Weasel. It's beautiful. I've seen pictures. I cannot wait to sit in it and fly it on Sunday. Like I don't know what happened to me, but the 150, this is like I can't wait. I'm just so excited. So there's good stuff coming, and it's all learning. I mean, it's going to be a learning experience, and we're in a great place. Like I feel like it's just it's a pivotal moments here, like of learning and just
all
learning.
of this work, all of this dedication, just so that you could finally fly a Cessna 150.
150. Yeah, exactly.
Look what I've seen on a 235, but it's not the same.
Look what I've built myself up to. Like, yeah, but it's awesome. These are the things that that'll be my 3rd make and model. 4th. I have a Warrior, bunch of 172 time, a 235, and now I'll be a 150, and that's like the fourth airplane I've flown. So I'm super excited. It's so much more to learn. Instrument rating got to start soon.
Bearded Aviator has flown about 27 different planes. That guy has flown. Mike has flown everything. So Fowler 28379. I have solo maybe Friday.
Where is that? I'm scrolling back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. He's saying, Chris, on your solo, did you only do one takeoff and landing, or is 3 normal?
Oh, great question. Yes, Fowler Tree. Okay, he has a solo coming up maybe on Friday. On your solo, did you only do one takeoff and landing? I think 3 is normal. Am I remembering that right? Very good. No, that's a great question. So you you did see my solo video. That's hilarious that people remember. This is why I leave things on the internet, Brian. You said don't take things off. I wussed out. I did a go around on my first approach because at that stage of my flying, I thought every approach was inappropriate to continue landing. So I went around on, and then I landed them on my second approach and then decided I didn't want to do anymore. So I took the plane back. So yes, I did only do one. Most instructors, and Kevin's here, but people say, hey, go up and do 3 laps, give me 3 laps in the pattern and come back. And that is pretty normal. But yes, you are remembering correctly. I wussed out and only did one landing on my first solo.
I don't think that there's maybe normal as much as I say it's customary. Generally, I think that it's 3, but it's not required. And it's, you might be in a situation where there's something going on with the plane, or there's conditions changing or something. So it's not like you got to persist through 3. So I did 3.
I gotta mention this. Joe Sager says he soloed at 19 years old, took his check ride at 66 years and 7 months old. So he had his first solo at 19 years old and did not take his check ride. I guess things happened, and then he ended up getting back to training. He took his check ride at 66 years. That's incredible.
Boy, the regs have gone through some changes, huh?
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine what's difference in 40?
Like they actually have regulations now.
That's amazing.
That's really, really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, good for you, Joe. That's awesome. Sorry, one more. Al Gibson. When training, did you read the FAR aim like a book, or did you just use it as a reference like a dictionary? I'll answer, Brian, then you can. I definitely did not read it. I did not read it like a book. I used it as a reference because there are so many sections, frankly. Let's be honest, that do not apply to you as a private pilot student. There's just so many that don't. You would be wasting so much time. So I spent a good deal of time in it. I bought, and Brian's going to get his. He may have done the same thing. I bought a set of tabs for mine from a guy who was making tests that really helped me go through it and pick out the areas that were key. You look like you did you tab yours manually? Yours looks really good.
Yeah, I did it myself.
Yeah. So, you pick out the key areas that, you're going to get asked on your check ride. You kind of know those, or at least know where they are, and you put tab. No, I didn't. I certainly.
So check this out. I don't know if you can see this, but to your point about reading it all the way through, absolutely no point, because so much of it, like you said, does not apply. I was so frustrated by that I actually highlighted the actual I actually highlighted 61 and 91.
Yeah, I see it there. Yeah, I see it.
That's the proportion. Of
amazing.
Where you're really going to be looking around. So it's definitely do not read it like a book. Definitely use it as a reference. Definitely isolate and make clear right away what are the sections that. There's all the drone stuff in here. There's all the. There's just not. The part 61 and part 91 stuff is very small proportion. But anyway, so yeah, or if you really
Bearded Aviator would like to remind you that that's last year's edition, and you need a newer version to start your instrument training. So you better
just threw it away. Yeah. By the way, that's what I wanted to ask you about this, Chris. How's your instrument training going?
But don't ask about that. It's not going. I haven't started, so I will. It's going to be a whole series. I keep saying it's life gets in the way, and then things get busy. But it is a thing that's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I just finally finished all of the videos in Sporties, and I'm getting ready to order the Shepherd instrument written thing, and then I'm about to schedule it and just get after it, even though I know that I'm not ready now. If I don't schedule it, I won't. So I'm just going to schedule it. So I think I'm going to have the instrument written done here, hopefully by, I don't know, late July.
Good for you. Well, you're about to surpass me. But the trajectory saw that coming. I mean, just at the rate at which you're just flying.
Scientists studying the situation.
Yeah, it's I've become the casual like weekend warrior as it is. Like I'm that guy now, and so you're the
I think
serious.
I think it really comes down to just I am like getting back to sort of the theme of this whole show here. I think one of the things I'm also very afraid of is any kind of atrophying of the skills and the learning and the feel. If I'm so terrified of getting in a plane and feeling like I've lost something or that I'm further back. And that is a huge anxiety of mine. And I just feel like for me to get to a point where I can endure a longer break if I'm taking one, I'm just going to keep plowing this field right now so that I can have that experience in the bank to rely on a little bit later if I do take a break. But right now, if I don't, it's not just because I enjoy it and I want to all the time, but I feel like if I don't fly within a week or 2 weeks, like I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. Not that I legit think I'm going to lose it all or something, but just, I want to aggressively stay ahead of that potential or that possibility. And then the other thing for me too is that I'm imagining, like, the reason why I did the night currency and then immediately did a night cross country and all that is I'm just trying to think about, I'm trying to get ahead now. It's like, okay, I'm starting to take a lot of longer trips. I don't want to be caught out with, my wife in the plane and feel like I'm not totally certain that I can get this thing back at night with a certain amount of confidence with her in the plane or whatever, and not have the currency. And so I just feel like, what are all the scenarios so that I don't feel undue pressure to make decisions to get back before nighttime? I want to be able to feel totally confident at night. So I'm doing that. So yeah, I'm kind of down to that stuff.
I just wonder if I'm not, and this is just now I'm talking out loud, but I wonder if I'm just not the opposite a little bit, and that I'm taking it for granted now a little bit. Like I can go 3 or 4 weeks and be like, well, I haven't flown since I went to Newport News for work a month ago, but as soon as I get back on Sunday, I can't wait to take this new plane out that I've never flown before. And just like, I wonder if I'm not as worried about like, I'm in the ride a bike syndrome now where I feel like I'm not going to forget how to fly. I'm just not going to forget that. But I do think to myself sometimes, Brian, that's a very good point. Like I think about how much I have forgotten, like, of things that I needed to know for my check ride. You remember how crazy it was when you were like prepping for your check ride and like all the things you just thought like, I have to know all of these things, like how many feet above a wildlife protected wildlife area you have to be. I don't know. I have to look that up now because I don't know how far that is. Like I'm just thinking of all these things that I'm
also
thinking,
how tall is the wildlife?
Well,
above sea level.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's that. Well, I can find that, but the point is like all of these things that I took for granted, like because I was studying so much. Yeah, everybody knows. Here comes Josh. 2000. Okay, fair. Okay, I would have had to look that up, but thank you for that. I'm going to take your word on it because if you've seen it on the internet, it must be true. But my point is that like I've stopped thinking about. I don't know that I'll think about those things again. You know what I mean? And so then I think, well, should I have went right to this? But then the other part of me says, like every time I fly, though, like every hour that goes by now that I'm in the plane, I'm spending less energy when I'm in the plane thinking about things that I used to have to think about, like the power settings and like how the plane feels and like what's my RPM at and what's my speed and what's
comms.
Communications. Like I think the more those things are easy for me, then when I start my instrument, I'm so far ahead of that. I don't have to think like that. That part takes up such a little piece of the pie now of my mental space. I'm really going to be able to focus on the things that I'm focusing on at that point. So that's kind of how I keep myself grounded and thinking like, I'm not going to forget how to fly a plane in a week. Like I'm not going to forget. Like I'm going to be completely competent when I get home. It will be almost a month since I've flown when I get home on Sunday and fly that plane. But I'm thinking I'm going to remember how to fly an airplane when I get home on Sunday. I'm not worried about that at this point. But the night stuff, like you mentioned, I have been trying to stay up on my night flying because we're going to go in July. We're flying to Cincinnati for a Greta Van Fleet concert. Brian, you'll appreciate that. You have a reference coming up in the upcoming YouTube video of a Greta Van Fleet reference. But yeah, it's like I'm going to fly.
I do?
You do. You said Greta Van Fleet on the radio. You may not remember it, but I have it. It's in the video. I just heard it today. It's great. But I'm going to fly to Cincinnati with my daughter and wife, and we're going to fly back from that concert at night in the dark. From Cincinnati to Fairmont, which is, again, it's like Ohio, like darkness, like complete nothingness. That's a pretty rough stretch of nothing. It's just black. So I'm trying to, as much as I hate night flying, I'm thinking ahead to that. I'm thinking about my family on the airplane, right? So I'm trying to I'm going to do more night stuff leading up to that than I like to do. I don't like night flying. I'm not a night flying fan. But I'm going to start doing more of it.
I will say that, for me, there's so many things about it that I really like. And then there's just, I feel that way until something goes wrong. But, and if I start thinking about the potentials and we're talking about like fear again, it's, we didn't even talk about, all the things that come up at night. But, I will say that for me, I kind of love it. I kind of want to do more of it, and find reasons or ways to do it that makes sense. It's pretty. I love how quiet the radios are by comparison, and I love the sensation of feeling like you're just like you can't see yourself moving, so you just kind of feel like you're suspended.
You know what else you can't. You know what else you can't see at night. Where you're going to land in when your engine dies, like so, which is classic to me because it's such like I love analyzing you specifically, and I don't know that we'll ever get into it in the grander scheme of things, like with what happened in our fly-in, but like I'm serious, the risk aversion of like what risk existed from the thing that happened to the plane you were flying, and how very specific you were about the risk aversion. Like statistically, night flying in a single engine piston, I mean, like the statistics are like, I mean, the risk of death is like significantly increased flying at night. I mean, like it's not even in the same realm. It's significant. But I also like it for the same reasons you do. There's a mental part of it that is just so, it's surreal. I mean, like it is just a complete detachment of like reality. And it's the peace and just it's just so, like you say, when things are fine until the time they're not, and then it's like now you're thinking, then you have to think like, oh, this black spot over here looks good, except what is it? A pond, a building, a forest? Like I don't know what I'm going to go put the plane in there. But I do also, for the same reasons you love it, like there's the part of it that when you're up there, it is just so it's just such a moment. Like it's just such a you can just separate from the universe, really. It's just such a thing.
it's so maybe the high of the weirdness of the high of that is more appealing to me than flying a possibly bad mag, fouled plug kind of plane all along the beach for an hour. But I still can't believe that I flew 6 hours that next day.
Yeah,
that's pretty. That's a lot of flying.
Yeah, it did fine.
Yeah, it did fine. Yeah, it was great. I think 6 hours with other people would be not as fun as there's something about flying solo for that long. And you don't have to worry about anybody else. If you kind of blow your altitude a little bit, you just,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You're not worried about anybody's comfort,
I love solo flying. I really do.
Yeah. Well, so there was one question. Let's see here. We'll just wrap up here real quick with everybody's. I want to make sure we get to everybody's something. Phoenix Sales, haven't done my written yet either. Okay, so maybe we should just all agree that we should have a study group or something. I don't know.
Yeah, all you guys
other people, I don't know.
Yeah, you guys are all ahead of me on your instruments. So
once you get your instrument ticket file, just about every time you fly helps tremendously. I totally get that. I mean, even on a smaller scale, just even though it's not quite the same, if I think about when I first started, how I would do a lot of flights without flight following, even if, because I wasn't really, I just felt like, well, I'm just doing a 30-minute flight or whatever. Now I do flight following everywhere all the time, nonstop. And if I'm not on flight following, it actually feels weird. So I think that the same kind of thing on the next level up, I can see that definitely happening with instrument. Let's see. Restream tells us that we've received 100 messages. Okay, great.
yay!
Bearded Aviator said that this has been an enlightening podcast. He called us gentlemen. And we've been here almost 90 minutes. Oh, because they were waiting. Oh, geez.
It also reminds us we've been here almost 90 minutes.
Gentlemen.
So the gentleman and we've been here almost 90 minutes.
One Dull Gig, you also can't see where you're going to land in IMC either. Yeah.
That's fair. I said you can't see it in IMC either. So that, I mean, yes, absolutely. No, that's fair. That's a fair comparison to make. If you're going to fly, if I'm talking about getting my instrument rating so I can fly IMC in a single engine piston, at night as well. You're right. I
think also it's about route planning. I mean, take a path, if go the way, I took a path on this last one where I knew that if anything happened, I was going to go west of the interstate and that the odds of me hitting a green field were going to be pretty high. I chose the path of my navigation to be over the most possible landing spots in that darkness. So some route planning stuff that can help in that, I think. But okay, I think the regs on cross countries in the 70s were much longer than they are now. Yeah, well, I mean, because you just songs on the radio were 15 minutes in the 70s. I mean, of course. Bring the 70s back. First time joining live on YouTube, not on Spotify. Thanks for having the option to interact. Very cool.
It's Aviation Journey. Thank you for being here. It was great to hang out. We don't normally go long. We're an hour typically, but when things come in like this at the end, we try to get to everybody. But thank you for being here. It was great to have you.
Yeah, let's try to rush through the rest of these real quick. First night flight while I was on final, the runway lights went out. I think I wore out the push to talk button, Scott Webster.
Try to turn them on.
Yeah, I kind of had an experience like that on this last one where I guess sometimes you just turn them on, and it's just because of the angle that you are, it just doesn't look very bright until I don't know. I've had certain airports.
I've been turning mine down lately. I used to get all I want them as at 7. I was like, get them as bright as they can be. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's so much brighter than everything else in the world. I just need them to calm down a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see, Fowler 28379. Chris, scared of night. I don't think you're scared of night.
Yeah, I am.
You are.
I don't like night flying. I really do not. I do not do it. But he's pointing out that 2 weeks ago I said I would consider the impossible term, which I did say, because it depends on conditions. I would absolutely, depending on the options, I would turn back. But his point is I'm scared of flying at night, but I would consider the impossible term. I fell on my chair. Can't wait until it is more relaxing.
I think it's fair to say. Yeah, we all have these paradoxes, right?
Yeah.
These kind of contradictions.
Absolutely. And I think that's just part of it. I think everybody has their own things that someone else might see as kind of that's not correct. But, until I don't know, everybody's got their own take on it. But sure. If my disclaimer about the impossible term was an 8,000 foot runway and like a headwind, and like I had all this runway left still behind me, like I might consider the impossible. If I was taking off into a 50 knot headwind, 50 on an 8,000 foot runway, I might consider the impossible turn at 300 feet. Right? I'm serious. I mean, I might be over the runway with still a 5,000 feet behind me. Like, it's the variables. There's so many.
Because then you're looking at the choice of, okay, either I do it and I'm alive and I make it, or I die never knowing if a 50 knot headwind would have gotten me back at 300
Of course,
feet.
the 50 knot tailwind becomes the 50 knot tailwind. The 50 knot headwind becomes the 50 knot tailwind. So, like, I'm not sure that I'm going to turn. And anyway, the point is, like, there's conditions that would, dictate that.
All right, let's get out of here.
Yep, good call. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out tonight. It was fun. We went long. We'll get more discipline. Thanks to all the new folks who are here tonight. Valor says we need to talk about taking off with 50 knot head. But I mean, I don't know. Great climb performance. Anyway, it was great having everybody. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Back on schedule. Thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Brian. Good talking to you again.
Thank you, sir.
And
good.
We'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.